Welcome to the 2 Months Podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Marshall, and we are presented by Boston Pizza South Common. We like to welcome them as a new sponsor with us. I really appreciate them, and they're a part of our amazing event that we just had, and we're going to get to that very shortly. But our guest waiting in the wing, he's sitting in his hotel. We're not going to say which hotel, but he's in Las Vegas, getting ready for a big game tonight because this episode will come out tomorrow, and we're recording on a nice Monday night. But our next guest is the color commentator of the Edmonton Oilers. He's the host of Oilers Now from 4 to 6. And you can find him on the regional coverage with Gene Principe, Jason Strudwick, and the cast there. We have Bob Stauffer. Staff, how's it going?
Good, Josh, and you should talk about the event that you had last week. We had a picture day on Monday night, so I was not able to go, but I did connect with Elliot Friedman after he came to my local haunt after the game that Camus and myself and some
Up
other people.
1905, Dan Baker.
Yeah, in the wine room, and we were in the wine room that night. And Elliot was effusive in his praise of the job that you did coordinating and the caliber of guests that you had and the amount of people that were there. And he said you did a fantastic job. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge. I mean, Elliot's got high standards,
Sure.
and so if he thinks, so tell me about the event. Like,
Yeah.
how did this all sort of come to fruition, and how did you get? I heard over 400 people were there.
Yeah. So we had 435 people checked in. That's the exact number, and we just kind of came up with our totals here. I just raised around $6,000 to $7,000 for charity. Might some more stuff might come in, but yeah, I just this a vision came about a year and a half ago. I pitched it to Mark Jones, who you know very well from the Child Advocacy Center in Red Deer, and then I pitched it to Elliot in the summertime. I think it was like May or June, if he would be interested in coming out and hosting it. So it was getting a little bit more traction. We originally had it booked in October. We pushed it back a month to November, and yeah, just we had some good visions on it. It was all mental health driven. Tyler Smith was an amazing keynote speaker. He's one of the winners of the Amazing Race Canada, and he was an alumni with the Humble Broncos. So his story was very resonant, very it was very emotional stuff. I don't know if you've ever
Yeah.
heard him speak, but a pretty tough story to kind of hear. But what he's doing, and then yeah, obviously Kevin Lowe very well, so he was a part of it, and Kurt Hill who's a regular on Oilers Now. He came out. Elaine Waugh, who gave me his email, and I reached out to Mr. Hill, and so he came on, and Sonny Barr, Tony's brother. We had Matt Demosek, and then Mark Jones. So it was a really good at night. It was, Elliot, I heard on Oilers Now talked about the young 19-year-old in the crowd. So he, as a in decathlon, and one of six out of 30 million trying out. So it was really reassuring to hear positive conversations, and just some of the great things we shared. Some of the event that we could share on our YouTube channel. We just couldn't share Tyler Smith stuff because he does it for a living. So it was really good. And yeah, Elliot was awesome. Got a nice text message from Kevin Lowe the following day, and he drove Elliot back to the hotel, to the area that around where they live and where Elliot was kind of staying. And yeah, just a good night. And yeah, it was nice that he was able to connect with you and Mooner at the wine room too. So it's
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? I mean, I think one thing, Josh, is very different about how we see things from a mental health perspective today, even than we did 20 years ago, but certainly than we did 30 or 40 years ago. And I think that, people are conditioned to have true empathy
yeah,
um, on this issue to the point that, sometimes when people deal with personal tragedy, even with players, like we don't always push the player. Like, in football, there used to be a term "next man up," and that was often attributed to significant injuries. But the other part of it is, lots of players have had to overcome, brutal challenges. And I think the one thing I'd say to you is that you never really know what somebody's going through. You don't know, and
yeah,
um, you know, I would say that 97% of my interactions with people in public are very positive, but even when they're not, I'm kind of wondering in the back of my mind, geez, I wonder what that guy's going through, right? Like what would possess somebody? And so maybe 15, 20. Now, it's a little bit different when it's in front of your kids, right? Because you want to protect your children. But in social situations where it's me alone, I try to diffuse any sort of you
Escalate
know,
the situation.
aggressiveness or assertiveness. And the way to do it is just to simply try to, find out a common ground and see, geez, why would they act this way or why would they be this? So I mean, usually, after games and stuff, if and there's only been a couple times over the last 15 years it's been negative, but it's usually because they've had too much to drink
Correct.
and they've got some other frustration going on and it feels them. So I think that, what you did is awesome. I'm sorry we weren't able to be there to support you in that event because we had our pitcher day.
Yeah.
I jokingly, I know I told the story. I said Cam Moon and myself. I've been to Disneyland several times, and the lineup for cars and like Splash Mountain used to be massive, right?
Yeah.
Well, the aerial ride was a ride that you could always get on, and it tended to be a little kid's ride for the sort of the 4 to 10 year olds. So often, because we went 8 years in a row to Disneyland in May for Hudson's birthday, and usually, invariably, the first ride we always went on would often be that ride because
Yeah.
we'd get into the park a little early because we'd stay in the grounds, and that would be one of the first ones that just sort of. But I said, Cam, you and me, we're like the aerial ride. There's massive lineups for McDavid and Draisaitl and draws for theirs. And then there's you and me, and they know they can come get us at any time. And the lineup's only like 5 or 6 people. So we tried to make the most of it that night, but I'm glad you had a great event. And congratulations to you for spearheading that up.
Yeah, yeah, it's the first time we've ever done anything like it. So, and I can't thank the Canvey Homes and KV Capital. They're new sponsors with us. Farhan Varani, Shafin Kanji, Aleem Varani, Anna was amazing. She kind of took care of everything behind the scenes, and sometimes those people don't get the credit because they're not in front of the stage. But just amazing people there, and then all their other sponsors. Just there's a whole list of them, and yeah, just you can't do those events without the support. And it was nice. I got a nice text message from Gene Principe in the morning before the event, and I know you and I've chatted about off record or away from the camera.
Oh, and we had you on the show going into it as
Yep,
well. It's
yep,
important that people
yep.
get some awareness. It's a terrific event. I know that this summer will be the Battle of Alberta Golf tournament again for the Central Alberta Children's Advocacy Center, which Mark Jones is a major driver with, and
Terry Lowen's there.
yeah, Terry Lowen and Al Sims. So I'm already booked for that one. We're looking forward to it, and
Yeah,
they do a great job with it. But it is humbling. Like it
it is.
just to be a part of events like that and to see communities rally and support one another, it certainly, and it's not lost on a guy like me. I've often talked about the fact that, Josh, working in the toys department of life,
Yeah,
having the privilege, like, yeah, sitting in a hotel room at 8 o'clock at night in Vegas. Well, you know what? The night's still young, but it is fun talking about hockey. It's a privilege to do it.
exactly, and we'll get to that right now. But yeah, just amazing people as there are in the game of hockey, as you know, and it is good to
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of get people to kind of join us together in initiative of talking mental health. So, and we're looking forward to our next event. I believe it could be July, maybe August, but we'll get there when we get there, and we'll announce that when we announce that. But let's get to some here and now. Let's get to the NHL report, sponsored by Shadified Salon and Barbershop, who I know you know very well, Shadi and this team.
Oh,
They,
yeah.
they're dying to see you. So Shadi's
Well, I might have to accelerate something and maybe come see them here in the next week.
yeah, exactly, because he's going to watch this and he's going to say, "I need to see stuff." So let's get to our Oilers report, sponsored by Shadified Salon and Barbershop. Where are you at right now with the Oilers stuff? Kind of a bit of an up and down, but they seem to be on the right traction right now. I even guys like Ty Emberson aren't going to get a lot of love, but I really thought he played a really good game in
Yeah.
Colorado, almost 20 minutes. So just where you at with the defense? Let's start there. It kind of seems to be the
Um,
quick conversation.
yeah, there's an old saying in hockey, right? Goaltending's 70% of hockey unless you don't have it.
Yeah,
And then it's 100% of hockey. So, Colorado went into that game with an 855 save percentage, the worst in the NHL. And then, the Oilers were 29th, and lo and behold, we're sitting with a 2-1 game, going into the third period of two of the highest scoring teams in the league. So I think these teams are capable of defending. You know, I it's pretty clear Ekholm and Bouchard for the most part have been with maybe the Carolina tandems amongst the best analytics defensive pairings in the National Hockey League. That hasn't stopped this year. Darnell Nurse has taken a quantum step forward here, even as he went through the injury on that massive hit from Ryan Reeves, which, by the way, in the 1980s was a completely acceptable hit, but we live in a different time. Um, Nurse, to his credit, has bounced back and since coming back in the lineup. I think he's put together the last 5 or 6 games. He's played pretty well. Stetcher's competitive and gives you what he's got, which is, he's a depth defenseman. You mentioned Emerson. He plays a lot with Kulak, and then Emerson also plays with Ekholm. And I know, Josh, you know my feelings because you listen to my show, and then we've discussed this as well,
Yeah.
just on how the offer sheets broke down with Broberg and Holloway. And my personal frustration, like in a perfect world, those guys would long term be a part of the Oilers organization. So Stan Bowman made two moves after the offer sheet. And Stan, of course, as you know, came in the third week of July, offer sheet in the second week of August. And he made two moves, and in one, and I know we're going to talk about Podkolzin in a second, but he traded for Podkolzin in a way to kind of replace at a fixed cost Dylan Holloway, and then Emerson was acquired from San Jose. I like Cody Ceci personally. The Oilers needed to buy the team down that way. Evander Kane wouldn't be sitting on LTIR all season, right? They'd have some flexibility, and then when Evander comes back, they don't have to make a move with somebody. They don't have to make a trade. So Kulak's had a real good year. He's bounced between third pairing left shot, second pairing right shot. Emerson, for me, his best work's been on the penalty kill, and everybody just needs to be patient. I'm not saying he's going to be a top four guy, but he can play in the league. He can certainly play as a third pairing right shot D, and he's coming along as a penalty killer. And the guy he's replacing was Vincent Desharnais, a third pairing right shot D. And who did he play with? Well, he played with Ekholm, the Desharnais, and that's who Emerson's playing with. Emerson's a different body type, smaller guy, but I think he's given the Oilers, some decent minutes, and he's coming. I will tell you, it's hard for those guys to play in Denver. It's a different altitude, and the Avalanche play at a pace that's unmatched by any other team in the league. And so I thought he weathered the storm, but his best work was on the PK. The Oilers' defense is middle of the pack right now, and when you factor in the save percentage, which is bottom five in the league, I think the defense has played pretty well. Last year during during that 16 game winning streak, they were giving up, Josh, 10.4 chances against per game. To start this year, they're giving up 11.2 chances per game. So, they're not giving up that many more chances. I think the defense has been okay. I mean, the bottom line here is they just didn't score early in the year, and they didn't get saves.
Yeah.
They didn't have great power play. And penalty killing was a disaster to start the season, and it started to get a lot better. So signs are pointing in the right direction. There should be expectation with this team. And they're 13-6-2 in their last 21 games after starting the season 0-3. So they're starting to look better. And I think they got a lot more juice to give. I think that they will score more consistently, and they'll get better support scoring as the season goes on.
It is, and obviously you talked about Podkolzin there, and he's kind of found in his groove now after getting that first goal. Can you talk about what he's meant to this group and what he's brought to the team?
Well, he works his absolute, tail off. Like he's on the ice 20 to 25 minutes before anybody else, working on things. Glenn Gulson spent some time with him after practice on puck touches. For the life of me, see, I didn't know this about Vasily. Okay. I just knew that it looked like he was not part of the future in Vancouver. Maybe he played better for Bruce Boudreau than he did for Tocchet. I can't figure out why Tocchet didn't like him, Josh. Like he
It's weird
works
because you would think he would be a talker kind of guy, right? So
well, he works hard. He's not timid. He finishes checks. You know what you're going to get from him. And if he can gain and you know, I mean, very different personality, but let's not forget Nichushkin had a year where he played over 50 games and didn't score a goal,
yeah,
right? And you know, it,
we questioned why Dallas would get rid of him and whatnot.
and then he ended up, he's had some big years with Colorado, and
Yeah.
and they missed him. They missed him because of what he was going through on a personal level in crunch time, and they still brought him back. That's how much they valued the player. And I look at Vasily, and I think Vasily can become a top six player. He's playing top six right now. I think he's actually scratching the surface of what he can do.
So
Like
does
if he
he
can,
would he
well,
go with Arvidsson and Draisaitl when Arvidsson comes back? And would that be what you would like as a second line?
I mean, it depends. I
Question
mean,
comes from KJ, who I know he's a texter in the Oilers now too. So
K-Jam, yeah.
yeah,
So,
KJ.
I, I mean, I think it's a slam dunk that Hyman will go back up with Nugent Hopkins and McDavid when he does return. And he skated today in Vegas. I just have a sneaking suspicion maybe he doesn't play tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe he plays against Columbus. I just have a feeling that that's. Um, and then Arvidsson's not with the team right now, so I don't really know what's going on with him.
Yeah.
I believe he was on the ice early last week. I don't know if they found something like, unfortunately for Arvidsson, he's dealt with some injury here over the last couple of years. But yes, to answer your question, I think Draisaitl, Arvidsson, and Podkolzin can be a second line. Um, I like what I thought Arvidsson in the preseason had a better chemistry with Draisaitl, and now what's happened? But Colson goes and gets the puck, right? Like he's really good on puck retrievals,
Yep.
and Leon likes a guy that can do it. And I mean, Podkolzin was the 10th overall pick in 2019. Yamamoto was the 22nd overall pick in 17. And there was a couple of years there where Yamamoto was pretty good on retrievals. And then unfortunately his play kind of dropped off, and I think he just got beat down because of his size. It's not going to happen for Podkolzin. He's a bigger man. So to answer your question and KJ's question, yeah, I think they could. I think that they could go with Draisaitl, Podkolzin, um, and uh, and Arvidsson once Victor gets healthy, and then still have McDavid with Nugent Hopkins and Hyman, and then the wild card are some of the other dimensions that are out there, right? Like what happens with Kane, because they don't have a dimension like Kane. No, I don't think Evander plays before the trade deadline. I would,
Is he more of a like April, like get him 10 games in?
I haven't talked to him.
Okay,
I'm cheering for him because first of all, you want to see a guy get through that.
correct.
Secondly, I felt bad for him last year as the playoffs wore on because he was just beat to you know what.
Yeah,
Um, but he also has something Edmonton needs, right? Which is a dimension. And so, like, what kind of juice can you get out with, for the sake of argument, what about him, Henrique, and Connor Brown?
correct.
Where Brown gives you some speed and then Henrique's a very wily player, and then can you have Kane on the third line there, and then people are going to be going, well, Stauffer or Skinner play. Well, Jeff Skinner will be the first to tell you he's got to be more productive because Janmark is not coming out of the lineup
No,
because he's a very useful player. So, um, and then there's Kapanen, and I know you got your Leafs connection to Kapanen. Um, I think Kapanen realized it's funny. I'm led to believe Kapanen had more. There was more than one team that put a claim in on him,
I could see that. Yeah.
right? Like because he can skate and he can penalty kill. So I'm going to be the Oilers are going to have some options here at forward, assuming that Kane can come back and play this year. So that'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think Kapanen, his best days were with the Leafs. I know we went around a little bit there, but he was a very effective player for Toronto, and one of those right shot guys that they let go in Brown and Hyman too. So, where you at with Hyman and I know on Wednesday here the
Yeah.
is for Canada are going to be announced. That do you vision 3 Oilers, 4 Oilers on that team? Obviously, we know Connor's there, but the Hyman, Skinner, Bouchard going to be in that mix too. And where are you at with
What do
that?
you think?
You know what? I got to stick to my guns in terms of what I said at the start of the year. I know that, but hey, we posted something on our podcast, Instagram account. I know you don't have Instagram, and we just tagged Matt Duchene in terms of getting him some flowers for consideration. And it's a shot in the dark. Matt Duchene ended up messaging us back on Instagram and had some good chats with him. He seems like a really good guy. Um, but I think he gets on that team, and I don't know if Hyman gets on there because the injuries and the slower starts.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the one problem I hate, and it was something that some other players have mentioned to me too, it's just too early to announce this team. It's the 2 months away for the tournament. So, Hyman can come back and Hyman can have 20 goals by the time this tournament starts.
Well, you can on this team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that can happen on this team. Like if the power play gets hot and he gets a hat trick and a couple multiple goal games. I think Zach's just he's gonna. I think it's gonna be tough. I
Yeah,
mean, he did score 54 goals. The one thing I will say is he can do something that a lot of those other guys can't.
yeah,
Real good forechecker. He's a legit net front that accepts his role on the power play. That's going to be an I don't even, part of me I'd love to see Skinner and Bouchard and Hyman all on the team. It's tough though with Canada because there's so many players.
there are. Yeah,
In goal, like that's the other thing. Like Skinner could bring off a 10-game winning streak and not be on the team, and the two guys that they pick on the team could go through tough patches. I think you're probably right, but I also think you got to look at it in terms of, do they need to give more of a runway to evaluate the players? That's a completely fair comment, but I would contrast that by saying I also think past accomplishment should matter in terms of the merit.
it should. And
Yep.
obviously, we saw what we saw in Philadelphia today, and Travis Sanheim and Travis Konechny kind of getting a little bit extra. Uh,
I love Travis Connect.
yeah,
Just
it looks
he
like
is.
yeah, it looks like those guys are on the team from what practice in Philadelphia was.
Well, and they were told not. Yeah. Anyways, I mean, I guess we'll find out Wednesday. I mean, the Oilers got the game tomorrow in Vegas, and we fly back afterwards, and then Wednesday's an off day. So,
Yeah,
I guess but to be honest with you, right now, I don't know. Um,
yeah,
you
and
know,
I hope we don't. You know what, stuff. To be honest, I know I was listening to Overdrive today, and Jeff O'Neill said it the best. Like, it's not their network that has the rights to announcing this, but it just leave it for the fans. Like, but he knows how the industry works. He talked about Frank Saravalli,
oh
who's
yeah,
a Monday and a Friday guest on Oilers Now, and Frank pretty much released the whole Kraken's roster
he
before
grinded on that one. Let me
he
tell
did.
you.
Yeah, and hey, you got to give him credit, but there's so much time between now and then, and obviously you listen to Friedman, and Friedman knows who's on it, but he's on a lock and key, and that comes out of his words from his podcast today. But as a suspense, it would be nice to not know. But I think the way this industry works, we're probably going to know. But
Oh, we'll find out. I'm
yeah,
sure at some point.
exactly. Yeah. Um, yeah, we'll see where it goes. And I think Skinner, I think, like you say, like he easily can rattle off 10 wins in a row, and some of these other goaltenders can go 3-7, and and then you're kind of in a
Well,
spot.
I,
Right?
I don't think Edmonton's totally put their team's game together yet.
Yeah.
I think it is showing encouraging signs. Um,
And I'll say this, sorry to interrupt, so
Go ahead.
Kyle Bacostas had this. I'll credit him because I learned this from you. Credit the source. On Friday's episode of the 32 Thoughts podcast, he goes, if if the Oilers win the Stanley Cup and Skinner and the Oilers win in a 4-2 fashion in that game or 3-2, he's like Skinner's a lock to be on the team.
He
So
nailed it.
why does it change because the slower start and they lost? It shouldn't. Just because he should be in the conversation. I thought that
Uh,
was a great point by Kyle
I,
Lacasa. So I don't.
I'll tell you what,
Yeah,
Josh, if you had told me going into game 7 that Skinner would have only given up 2 goals against, I would have told you the Oilers would have won.
correct. Same
But
here.
I would have said that about Talbot in game 7 against Anaheim
Yeah.
as well,
Hmm.
right? Like, so very different teams. Just by the way, skill testing trivia time.
Oh, I'm
The
not gonna.
player,
Yeah.
the player that scored Edmonton's lone goal in game 7, round 2 that year against Anaheim is with the team.
Yeah. Corey Perry.
The, the Oilers only have 5 players on their team that played in that game back in 2017. Okay.
Yeah.
So you know who,
So that would be it. Would obviously Draisaitl, McDavid,
yeah,
Nuge, Nurse,
yes, Nurse, that's 4.
and
The fifth guy is the guy that scored the goal.
Corey Perry. Yeah.
No, 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 for Edmonton.
Oh, for Edmonton. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank here. Fans are gonna be listening and be like typing it in and screaming it. I don't know.
It's a hard one. It's a good one that you can stump your buddies. How about Drake Caggiula?
Oh yes.
He scored the goal in game 7.
Yeah.
So, and it was Janmark that scored the beauty, shorthanded right after Florida went up. And it was a game of it. Like that's the thing. Like you lose in a 6 or 7 game series or win in a six. Like, it's funny because I know you're a Leafs fan, and I think of Pasternak scoring that overtime winner in game 7. Toronto's right there.
Yeah.
They're right there, man. And Toronto's played in a tougher division than Edmonton. Like, I mean, I have a little bit of fun sometimes with the Leafs fans, and And the reality is that David and Draisaitl just simply took their game to another level. But Edmonton also benefited, I think, 3 years in a row. I mean, without Drew Doughty, there's no way the Oilers should have been taken to 7
Mhm.
in 2022, but they didn't know how to win yet, right? They didn't like that, you had to know how to win a series. And then they beat Calgary in round two, and I didn't see that coming. Um,
And
they
at
get
that time,
LA.
we had a lot of run of Calgary Flame guys on our podcast, and they didn't see it coming either. So,
No, no, like I'm the
yeah,
broadcaster for the Oilers, and I thought it was going to be a 6 or 7 game series all day.
yeah,
And I thought Calgary probably had the deeper team. They finished ahead of Edmonton in the standings, and the Oilers got pushed 7 games against an LA team without Drew Doughty. Um, and then you go 2 years ago, and the Kings are up 2-1 in game four, and they're up 3-0 in game four of that game. And you're thinking, we're in big trouble here. And the Oilers storm back, and Hyman scores in overtime, and the Oilers never look back. They win in six. Even last year, you know, the Kings do what they needed to do in the opening 2 games in Edmonton, but the Oilers stole game. Skinner stole game four for them
yeah.
in LA, and they went in five. And where I'm going with this is, I'm not necessarily convinced, with all due respect to the Kings, good team. If they had played one of those teams in the Leafs division, I'm not like, if they play a Tampa or Florida or Boston, I'm not sure you're playing the amount of play. You can only play who's in front of you.
Correct.
Right. And so, for all the criticism at times fun we have, I do have some empathy with Toronto, just in terms of who they've matched up against. Tampa Bay's won 2 cups, Florida's won a cup, Boston won a cup back in, or went to the final in 2019. Those are some good teams. It's tough to beat, and it's tough to win come playoff time.
Yeah, they've and for the Leafs right now, just another big win over the Blackhawks. They're not rolling as we would like to see the Blackhawks roll, but you know, Craig Bruba's got this team. I think they're second in goals against in the National Hockey League. Alain Waugh's got 2 of his studs in net there with Wall and Stolars. Stolars used to be in Edmonton, and you know,
What a story he is! Like, he's
it is,
just,
yeah. There's
you know,
consideration he could be on Team USA come Wednesday.
he's got, you know what, he's gotten healthy and he's gotten right. He was always a real good athlete. He's overcome some significant injuries.
Yep.
We discussed the hiring of Brad Treliving. You know my feelings on Brad. The Leafs needed to toughen up. They've toughened up. They are a
Completely
hard team,
different team. Yeah.
completely different, no question about it.
Yeah. And hey, we're friends with Matt Benning. You know Matt Benning, and he's unfortunately,
I
grinding.
saw him.
Yeah.
Did
Did
he tell you? Did he tell you? I saw him in
you? Oh,
Toronto because they were playing before. Yeah, the Marlies were playing the Ottawa Senators farm team, so I watched half of that game. But I saw Matt at the morning skate for the Oilers and Leafs that morning, when the Leafs ended up winning in overtime.
yeah. He's a good guy. He's a really
He's a
good,
great guy.
yeah, good and great family. And his brother is lighting it up in the American Hockey League too for the Florida Panthers organization. So, Mike Benning, 8 years gap between those two. Okay, let's go. I know you have Al May always on your show. I don't know if he's a weekly guest or you guys fit him in once every.
Like once a month, he does the show. Yeah.
So we all knew what was out on Pierre-Luc Dubois, but it looks like Spencer Carberry, and Mitch Love's a friend of ours. He's been on our podcast. He's an assistant coach there too. But it looks like maybe Spencer Carberry's worked something out here with Pierre-Luc Dubois. I don't know how much you've been able to see him play, but it may look like this is the right fit for him so far. It is still early, but just kind of want to get your thoughts on what we've seen from Pierre-Luc
Well,
Dubois before, or you're not there yet, stuff.
I mean, I'm looking to who's leading the team in scoring.
Yeah,
Still in Strome.
yeah.
And I think back to going in. Edmonton was in Toronto, and we went in to go see Erie play, and then Edmonton was in Pittsburgh, probably middle of February back in 2015. Went to go see Erie play, and at that time, I didn't think Edmonton was going to win the lottery. I thought they were going to end up with the third or fourth overall pick, and I thought, are we looking at Hannafin or are we looking at Strome? I've always liked Dylan Strome. You know that. He can think and process the game. Yeah, he's not the most explosive skater. He's got a lot of skill. Stan Bowman, of course, traded Schmaltz and got Strome and Perlini in that trade. Um, and Chicago's made some interesting moves.
Yeah.
some would say, like, I'm a big Kirby Doc guy. He's having just a real difficult time right now.
But that's
It,
an ACL. We know those are tough to come back from.
well, yeah, yeah, absolutely. But Strome, and I haven't focused as much on Dubois. The only thing I'll say is always bet on talent.
Yeah.
And he's got talent. So at some point, the guy gets it going, and it looks like he's got it going on.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy. Great. I don't know. I just think it's it's you always cheer for good stories, and and
Yeah,
there was a lot of doubt with Strom there too. So, um, all right, let's finish up on two other things here. We're gonna see an emotional night in Calgary tomorrow night.
yeah,
Tonight,
yeah.
we got the. It was nice to see Guy Goudreau on the ice with the Calgary Flames today. The entire family, immediate family, and cousins, uncles, everything's in Calgary. The Goudreaus are there. Obviously, the Blue Jackets will be playing the Calgary Flames. Both organizations are going to be wearing 13 Goudreau jerseys each side, and they're going to be donating it to Mad Canada. And I think Kid Sport Calgary, those
It's
be the
awesome. It's awesome that they're doing that. It's still a horrible tragedy what happened, but it's great that the organizations are working together because they had a nasty one, as you know,
yeah.
last week. That was a nasty game. I loved it. I loved it as a neutral observer, right? But
Exactly. Yeah.
no, I think it's wonderful that the organizations are, doing what they can. It's still just such a brutal tragedy, but I'm with you 100% right. It's going to be an emotional night in Calgary. And then, of course, Columbus comes to Edmonton right after.
Yeah.
Dean Evison is a really good coach.
He is.
Okay. His teams play hard. They're competitive. They tend to be tough. When he had that Minnesota team going, look out. I mean, all that happened in Minnesota last year is they were injured on defense. And in this league, you can't be injured on defense. He's a good coach. And that's Columbus is going to be a hard out, and I'm going to be. I know we've got our game, and if we're in Vegas,
Yeah.
starts about an hour later than that game against Calgary. I'm hoping to watch the first period of it.
Yeah, it would be good. Just a quick rip before we get on one last fan question. What's your thoughts on Ryan Huska as a coach? A guy that's like he's done it all up the ranks, assistant coach to head coach, assistant coach to head coach at every level here. I mean, he's got that team kind of going. I know they won 4 in a row at home, and it's wandered that on the road. But
Oh, I think he's done it. Like, you know what? He's touched all the bases. I totally get what Calgary did. They weren't in a position to go win. They're doing a bit of they're trying to thread the needle, right? They don't really want to rebuild, but they're having to transition their team a bit. And what they did is Brad left and went to Toronto. It's a great job for Brad, but they stayed internal with Conroy and Pascal, and they stayed internal with the coach.
yeah,
And to me, that made a lot of sense. And frankly, those three guys were part of some pretty competitive American Hockey League teams. So to me, it made a lot of sense what they did. And that team plays hard. The Oilers have played them twice this year. Those have been hard games, and I know they're going to show up. It's too bad we've only got three battles of Alberta, but I will be intrigued to see where they go in the future because
correct. Yeah,
the toughest thing to get is really elite top level talent, and sometimes when you're middle of the pack, you kind of get boxed out of those draft slots to get those guys. Um, by the way, for the life of me, I'm stunned that Zane Parekh was not at least invited, along with Carter Yakimchuk,
yeah.
uh, to the Team Canada selection camp. When you're
Michael Spence was a surprise for me too. Michael Misa or Malcolm Spence, sorry, was
yeah, well, and Michael, I mean, Michael, how's Misa not go? He's got a
I know,
goal per game.
I know,
But
yeah.
that's Canada. Where Canada's so deep, and
Iginla's not even there either, right?
again, it was a six overall pick. So you got a couple of mid-second round picks of Pittsburgh
Yeah,
that are there at forward and defense. You're not bringing a top six overall pick at forward and two top nine picks at defense. I was very surprised by that.
yeah. I was very because I know Conroy was on the Ray and Dregs podcast last week, and he was pretty much sure that he thought Perek was going to be invited to.
I'm stunned that he's not.
Yeah, so I think the organization's surprised there. Okay, let's finish up on this last one here. This is a general question from a lot of our fans of our podcast, and right now here in Edmonton, stuff. I wouldn't say all minor hockey league coaches, but there's enough right now doing this, and there's this weird, I don't know what you want to call it, but I don't know if it's a personal agenda, gait or whatever it is. But what's happening is some of these kids, they're missing practices because they're sick a day before they play a game. So they're healthy enough to play at the game. They miss that practice. They show up at the game. They're benched for the first 10 minutes of a game. Like,
Hmm.
what's your thoughts on this? Why is this still happening? And why is it happening now? Is it right to do this? Is it wrong to do it? Where are you at? I know you've played minor hockey. You've been covering this game for most of your whole life or your entire life. But do you think this needs to change, or is there a way that the game? Because my view, Stoff, to be honest, the game's not about the coaches; it's about the players, and you talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
We're here because of the players. You gotta empower them, and I
Yeah.
it's football. You look up to Nick Saban a lot. I do too, but and I think Nick Saban's one of the best developers in human life and in athletes' life. And it's what he said. People aren't going to, he said this at the ESPY Awards. People aren't going to remember what you say, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. And I don't like this. I think we need to, and he said that. And he said a few other great things in his ESPY speech. I know that might not have to tie with the question, but I just don't like it. I like coaches where it's not about them, it's about the players. And I think when coaches do this, it's about them and it's not about the players.
Well, it's interesting. You got some pretty strong opinions on that. I'll tell you that I was when I was playing competitively in Pee Wee and for Strathcona Warriors, Bantam, or in Pee Wee and Bantam, and when it was Double A with Strathcona, and then Midget Double A with Southside, I would get sick. I often had strep throat, and if there was a cold, I was going to get it.
Yeah.
And I remember my mother would cringe listening to the other parents because I would play through an illness because that's what everybody did. Like, think of kids sitting there and wrapping their lips around a water faucet at school. That used to happen. We don't do that now, right?
Yep.
But it increased the probability that there would be sickness. I I know that I wasn't as good when I was sick, and I was generally probably. I know I like to belittle myself on the air, but usually I was the third or fourth best player on my team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in the second year, and when I wasn't going, I knew it, and it was often from head colds and sick. It's remarkable. As I got fatter and more out of shape, Josh, I got sick less. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Like I've missed one game in 17 seasons of doing the others due to an illness.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It's been over a decade since I called in sick and missed a show. Okay.
Well, you did what, 52 out of 55, 54 weeks last year. So,
Yeah, at one point I was up to, yeah, I'd done 51 straight. I know that the year I got COVID in Chicago, I took one show off.
yeah.
That's it. And they're like, you have to take this show off, right? And then I stayed in Chicago for 3 more days that week
Yeah.
and did the show. And I could, but that's a tough, that's a, I kind of understand it. I don't think you should necessarily, I can tell you I moved into a city and we had a well-meaning coach, and I was an aggressive kid leading the team in scoring in midget B the first year that we moved in because we couldn't afford to play and try out for the double A team. And I got sat for a game because I had too many penalty minutes and we lost like 8-1.
Yeah.
So the other guy who was supposed to get sat, he didn't get sat. And I mean, I got too many penalty minutes because I was an aggressive guy and attacked the net and hit people. That's why again, I wasn't very happy about that. So I can't imagine that kids would be very happy if they're trying to fend off a head cold or they miss a practice. They don't want to make other kids sick. And then lo and behold, they're getting sad again.
Yeah.
Very tricky situation. I was unaware that this had become a regular thing. I find it surprising that this is happening as
Yeah.
much as you say it is.
Yeah. I was saw it on the weekend at two different games. And I was just
Hmm.
very surprised.
Me too.
Yeah.
That does surprise me.
Not good. Um, all right, stuff. Let's see if this changes. Maybe the fact that people can talk about it might change. Who knows? But maybe some
Yeah.
just won't change their ways. Who knows? But anyway, stuff. We appreciate you joining us here on the
Hey, anytime.
yeah.
Hey, great job again.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. You have a good one. We'll catch you on the tube and catch you on the dial as well too.
Reach out anytime. Okay, Josh?
Perfect. Thanks, Dolph.